meant to be. You're meant to be. Okay. Yeah. Many of you might think that this whole thing needs to fit under like a turbo tail or a ducktail. That is not the case, my friends. I have designed this so it fits under a standard Porsche deck lid, as demonstrated by this lovely piece of carbon fiber kit, which is actually going on this car. This is the car we did the carbon fiber roof, so it's actually going to have carbon fiber hood, carbon fiber roof, carbon fiber, carbon. Before this video gets fully started, and you're going to see an incredible journey that's going to go from the very bare bones, nothing here, to this. Throw me a comment if you would. Throw me a like. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, because there's a lot of very, 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 very cool content coming up, getting this engine into a couple of different cars, actually. But I want you to go on this journey with me from this dead scratch, getting something ready for this Porsche show until here, which is the sort of final photo shoot before I get it in the car. Welcome back to another episode of Rennch. On today's show, we have a huge upgrade for the Subaru Flat 6 engine swap for vintage Porsches, as well as a full thrash to get ready for the Porsche Lit Show, which is what we call Super Bowl week here in Southern California. Hi there, if we don't know each other yet, my name is Michael. A few years ago, I was building a really cool race car converted to street car. I decided to do an engine swap with the Subaru EZ30R Flat 6 in lieu of a Porsche engine, mated to a Porsche G96 transmission. Over that time, many people started saying, hey, do you do an engine swap for vintage Porsches? So over the last 2 or 3 years, I've been working on developing a bolt-in flat 6 engine swap for vintage Porsches. I can see the finish line. It's right there. And finally, after well over a year of development, I finally got what I think is the final piece of the puzzle. Now, this is something that I designed in October, started interviewing manufacturers at SEMA in November, and it has just arrived. So that's December, that's 3 months. And one thing that I wasn't prepared for as you become a manufacturer versus what we all do, which is kind of hot rod and bolt something on or make something work, is how long the process takes. Because I got this prototype in. If I need to make changes to it, it's another 3 months before it arrives on my doorstep. So my fingers are crossed that the one that I've designed is going to be the perfect fit and allow for the perfect cooling for this car. Now, if you guys don't already follow Jimmy Oak's YouTube channel, he's doing a Maserati V8 swapped G-body Porsche, like an 87 or something, with a G96 transmission, which is the same one I'm using. So we've been chatting a lot on Instagram about both of our builds. And I wrote to him the other day and said, you know, one of the bigger challenges as a YouTube guy is when you get something new that you've been working on for months and months and months, and you can't just open it because the camera's not on. And it's like not being able to open your presents on Christmas. So I've had this new radiator at my house for like a week and a half, and I've not been able to open it. So I was waiting for you guys. So let's do that now, and then I'm gonna tell you all the things we need to do this week to get my display engine ready for the Lit Show. I wanna give a shout out to my friend Simon on the other side of the world, who was able to fast track this prototype build before everybody went on vacation for a month or however that works in China. So here we go. This is so exciting. I've only seen this in 3D. I designed it in Fusion 360, and then I took it around to SEMA and I asked if somebody could build it, and then they built it. So here we are for the first time seeing what I hope is going to be the official Rennch Subaru swapped Radiator. Okay, first of all, that's gorgeous. Holy frick. All right, come on, you guys. Let's freaking go here. Come on, man. Okay, all right. Calm down, everybody. That is just too rad. All right, let's get this stuff off. Yeah. Oh, that looks so awesome. Okay. Yes, so here we go. Look at that. So this thing is actually mounted to the wrong side right now, but the air will come in through the top. Here's this lovely radiator cap that looks like it's totally dialed, but I'm not gonna mess with it. We've got 2 ports that match the outlet ports on the Subaru engine. So I have 2 tiny little hoses that will go from the front of the motor and pop up into there. It goes through this, and this radiator is apparently like, this is supposed to be like the coolingest NASCAR race car radiator they make. So this is supposed to be pretty awesome. Anyway, so it mounts in the engine compartment like that. Fans will be on the bottom, not the top. So it's got 1 outlet port that is on the same side as the thermostat housing. And it comes with different connectors. These are all threaded. So I can either put a hose on, or I can do AN fittings. And then they've tapped the edge here, and this is how you mount it to my custom mounts, which I'll show you right now. So I got a new shipment from Send Cut Send. So these pieces are all my radiator holder upper. I've got to get these powder coated, a very cool color, because these are the ones that are going to go into the Blasphemy build. So these are adjustable standoffs. These are anodized black. They look like this. They're very cool. So I hope that we all did our calculations right, and that this thing is going to bolt properly to the side here. Oh, it's nails. 35 mil. Awesome. Okay, dudes, here we are, and it is time to start focusing on this bad boy. Now, if I haven't shown this to you guys yet, this is my kind of portable engine stand. This thing's going to have a radiator on it. This is what I'm going to use to start all of the engine swaps that I build prior, so that way I can test it and make sure everything's working properly, etc., etc. I built this last year towards the end of the year. It's pretty simple how it works. It uses the engine mounts underneath, and then the engine sort of sits on top of this. I may at some point make some kind of strap or something to strap the front down, but right now the front is kind of loose. Wherein lies the problem? At the end of the last event, I was wheeling this thing down the ramp. Obviously it's quite heavy, and the ramp broke and the whole thing took a tumble, which was such a bummer because it broke both engine mounts. So I have to get the engine off of this piece, fix the engine mounts, and then lower it back down. The good news is I've picked up 2 brand new engine mounts with original brackets, which I didn't have. I'm going to have to make a couple of plates that will accommodate these holes like this, so I can drop the engine down. This matters. If you guys aren't familiar with the Blasphemy build, if you see these brakes hiding in there, they are acid green along with that little spot. Well, what I've done is I knew I was going to be putting an intercooler in this car at some point, so I had my new radiator brackets powder coated acid green. So these things look incredible, and I need to make sure that all of this is assembled today. So one thing I have to do, obviously, is get rid of the turbo setup on here. I don't want to show that as my display engine. And I have these headers that I made, but I need to weld the Porsche flanges on, and they obviously need to connect to the right spots on the muffler. So that is a bit of the fabrication we're going to be doing in this episode.
I have friends in
All right, we are naked now, and you can see that these things got all bent up, and they're not that strong to begin with. I had to cut these big slots to get the motor mounts to work. So none of that is good. I've got to replace that. And then on the engine itself, these things are toast, fully ripped. So thankfully it's only 3 bolts to pull them off. one down, one to go. All right, now that the motor mounts are in, I've got to get the actual cradle ready to mount. We're good to go. Got my metal cleaned. I have the cradle kind of straightened out. I'm gonna cut two kind of metal squares.
Where's the Mr. Ben? What's up, shop pup? No, my voice.
Okay, I had a ton of stuff to do between the last shot and now. However, I did make these plates at the hot rod shop. I just did like 2 slots. And what I'm gonna do is lay them over the existing plates and bolt it all together so it's all reinforced. And then I'm going to tack these on. It's actually helping me flatten this. I have welded the gusset on. The paint is still wet. I'm using my favorite roll bar and chassis paint just for now. I can't put the orange paint on because there's no way it's going to dry, and I have to make these headers. It's like 9 o'clock p.m. and I still have to get this thing mounted and get the headers on. So going to start that now. She's in and she's well mounted, but I have to put the headers on and I have to start fabricating. I got a bunch of pie cuts so I can locate the muffler in the right spot. But I gotta say, after waiting months and months and months and months, I have to see what the new bracket and the radiator actually look like on this engine. Pluck my 3D printed intake covers. So pretty proud of this piece of kit here. This is anodized aluminum, multiple heights, and this way you can adapt it to whatever height your engine compartment is, if it happens to mount a little lower or higher. And then on the cradle itself, it allows you to move the radiator back and forth to change angles. Like maybe you have a ducktail or maybe you have a regular tail and you want to be able to maximize the radiator right up against the grill. So pretty proud of all of this engineering. Man, that setup took way longer than I expected. But look how badass. Come on. This is so cool. Everything fits exactly as I designed it. So this is kind of how the flow goes. The output ports of the Subaru pop out here. They go directly into the radiator right here. This is this really bitchin' 5-row NASCAR crazy radiator. Boom, boom, boom through here. Then out right here, where it drops down. Either goes into an external water pump, which is gonna hang like here, or directly goes to the thermostat, which is mounted under there. Fuel pressure regulator and flex fuel sensor and everything through here. And then you've got the rad little ghosted Rennch logo. So there are much higher tech ways to do this other than a empty bin and a set of seat rails and some wood. But this actually gets me really close to the right height. I haven't quite dialed in the level yet. One side's a teeny little bit lower than the other, but it's pretty darn close. And what it looks like is that I can take two of these pie cuts and I can do a down and then an up. Okay, dudes, it is D-Day. Have to load in today at 6 o'clock. It is Friday morning at 9:41. Got 3.5 hours of sleep. I don't know why I keep doing this to myself. Really, really good, really productive day. So I really got close, but I have to make a couple of pie cuts for this side. The, what would that be? I guess that would be the passenger side in a Porsche. A couple pie cuts to fix that. I didn't want to do that at 3:30 in the morning, despite having the garage doors closed. Who knows how loud it would be. So I had kind of a happy accident here. I just knocked the tacks off and hit this with a hammer, and this ended up falling into perfect sync with the headers themselves, leaving this nice little pie cut. So now I just have to make this pie cut and tack it all together, and I'm all set because everything else has stayed exactly level and exactly how I want it. Dope pie cut for the win. Look at that. Perfect. All right, I've got the pie cut tacked. And I think I can do everything else off of the engine. All right, I ran out of battery, but I decided to coat these in Steel It, which is kind of this really cool stainless steel spray that goes on really thick. Literally almost looks like things have been powder coated. And I think it dries relatively quick, although we do have a few hours for it to do its thing before I need to bolt it back together. There it is. How great is that? Totally ready for the morning. Can't wait to show it to everybody. It's gonna be awesome. The offset of the acid green with the black and then with the brand new chrome radiator is just friggin' ridiculous. It looks so awesome. Yeah, I'm really excited about this configuration as well. This is the first one where I've left the bracket for the air conditioning here. It's still on, which means that this engine can still run full air conditioning. So it's gonna work in our 911s, and that will give you air conditioning and heat because the AC pump is already on the motor. So it's gonna be really cool. I think the headers turned out great. The Steel It paint looks amazing to me. Yeah, man, it just all looks really good. I think there's gonna be a lot of questions about it, and hopefully we'll have a lot of answers, and you know, maybe move some engines tomorrow. Well, boys, we made it. Let's go. So I keep finding reasons to extend this video. Now that the engine looks lovely and ready to roll, I need to use it for marketing purposes. I actually have to use it for website photos and videos and things like that. I bought a really cool backdrop so I can do amazing pictures of everything. But you eagle-eyed folks that have been following this EZ30R swap for a while might notice something is missing. And that something is the engine cradle. There's nothing there. And the reason why there's nothing there is A, I can't really fit the cradle on while it sits on this display stand. But two, I'm in the middle of redesigning the cradle because I can't leave well enough alone. Here's the cradle. Oh, so here's the cradle as it currently exists. And the way I did it was sort of like, if you imagine those old school, like balsa wood dinosaurs you'd get at the art museum, and you could assemble them by slotting them together. That's how I designed this entire thing. But that was before I had my amazing Fireball fabrication table where I can actually set up jigs. So what I'd like to do is kind of go back to plan A, which is to use a little bit more tubing than I have in this current build. And the reason why is because, a couple reasons. Number one, tubing is just stronger. Number two, I can get tubing bent and laser cut the way I need it. So I can actually get the pieces I need prefabricated and slotted so that I can just kind of retool everything so that we can use some tubing and not these bent pieces because they were very expensive. Okay, so I have the front piece kind of ballparked in. What I've done is taken some TIG rod here and bent basically the bend that I need. So it's going to attach down there somewhere and then come up and attach to that rod. So you guys just saw myself and the lovely and talented Chelsea get this, what is a 76-912E, which is going to be the first of the Subaru engine swaps. It will go right here. And since I'm redoing the cradle, I thought it might make sense to get it bolted up and just make sure that my dimensions were right. Then I'll make sure the tubes are going where they need to go. And we should be, getting there. Look how rad this setup looks. So stoked. This is the first time I've seen this radiator inside the car, which is really cool. Okay, I've got everything pretty much mocked up here. The engine's the height it needs to be at. The radiator's pretty close to where it's gonna live. And this is worth noting, for those of you who are kind of new to this whole Subaru swap situation, everything's custom. All the brackets and everything to make this thing bolt into a completely stock 911, including this radiator, which of course I've just gotten. Now, when you draw things up on paper, you hope that they're as close as they can be to perfection. There's one spot here that still needs to be tweaked, but I think it's actually fixable locally, which is really good news. Many of you might think that this whole thing needs to fit under like a turbo tail or a ducktail. That is not the case, my friends. I have designed this so it fits under a standard Porsche deck lid, as demonstrated by this lovely piece of carbon fiber kit, which is actually going on this car. This is the car we did the carbon fiber roof. So it's actually gonna have carbon fiber hood, carbon fiber roof, carbon fiber deck lid. And this thing is just a piece of glorious beauty. Anyway, so look where we are here. Bottom aligns perfectly. This thing is nails. The top is so close. But right here, this filler neck, which has a 1-inch extension on it, is just interfering with it a little bit. I've actually even taken the cap off. But the reality is, I'm gonna have to cut this 1-inch filler neck and drop it all the way down so it's flush. I also had this idea of making kind of an S so the filler neck was out here somewhere instead of right where it is, because it's kind of right under this little shelf. This is literally what happens when you're prototyping something that doesn't exist in the world. Is sometimes when you get it in situ, you go, oh, that's not exactly what I thought it was gonna be. Anyway, not completely insurmountable. I can literally cut this off, drop this thing down, re-weld it, and it should be fine. So I think now that I have it in place. I've got the height pretty much where it wants to be. I've got the radiator kind of where it wants to be. I'm going to just do a little bit of trimming of the 2 tubes that I just created, just to get them in the ballpark so I can start mocking up where they need to be. I basically have these 4 tabs that I've cut out on the mill, and obviously I just have to create the little squares out of them and figure out what shape I want each one to be. All right, I have this guy tacked in. I mean, when I say tacked, it is very rough on each side, especially up there. I'm not entirely sure how I'm going to pull it off. So once again, Fireball table to the rescue. What I've done here is kind of jigged up something where I can basically duplicate this same angle and location on the other side. At least I can get this thing relatively close, within a millimeter or 2. All right, so for all intents and purposes, this is done. Although I realized I overcomplicated it a little bit. As I was kind of cleaning it up, I realized that the tabs I just welded on are actually perfectly in line with the bottom. I literally could have just rested this thing on the bottom and welded it that way, and it would have been fine, just picked an angle. The good news is, when I create these in Send Cut Send, it'll be really easy for me to just add this to a bend so that this one thing is just one whole piece. All right, dudes, so we are on what I would consider the final stanza of the tubing-based engine cradle upgrade. And I've gone back and forth, or backwards and forwards if you're from the UK or Australia, how I'm gonna execute this. So what I did yesterday is I fabbed these up, and these are basically these little tubes. I took a washer and I just welded it, and then I just ground it all down. The 14-year-old in me wishes I knew how to do this when I was making pegs for my freestyle bike, but neither here nor there. That's what these are. I could literally bolt them on one of these bikes and grind on it right now. Anyway, so what they're going to do is they're going to mount underneath, just on the bottom side of the factory engine mount locations. And then what I've got is the tubing for the cradle comes up from the back, and it's going to have a little kink that's going to end up sinking into this particular spot. Now, today I bought another 4-foot chunk of tubing, and I went over by the hot rod shop and just bent this little chunk. I really just need like 2 15-degree angles. So what I'm going to do here is, I really literally need like this much of this tube. So we'll get this all nice and coped. All right, so here's my fitment. It's pretty good, I think. My joint is pretty tight all the way around. I'm doing my best without the use of laser cutting or CAD or anything to basically duplicate each side so they're both perfect. So what I did is I used this tape and made a template, and then turned it inside out on the other piece, and at least holding it up before I cut it, looks pretty good, looks pretty accurate. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this, and then use, well, that's one-time use only, and then use my Fireball table so I can make sure that it's exactly mirrored. All right, dudes, it took me a lot of the day to get to this point, but both sides are on, and they look pretty darn symmetrical. This looks like it's right from Tron. I can't believe how simple this thing is. Really, it doesn't look like much, and how much work this represents. It's crazy how many hours have gone into this. Now, I can see it's not perfect. It's pretty darn close. Don't get me wrong. I gotta weld this thing up now, and I've got to do it without distorting it. All right, I'm changing tack here a little bit. For whatever reason, this tubing is super contaminated, and I'm just getting sparks and crap everywhere. So I'm gonna do the MIG-TIG pulse tack weld all the way around. I just gotta weld these brackets. These are kind of, these take a lot of the bulk of the load. You figure that this thing is mounted here and up front, but this is just rubber, you know? So this is gonna take the bulk of the load as the engine sits on this cradle. And I just have to weld these brackets on. So this is just gonna be a quick tack all the way down on each side, and I should be able to release this and we should be good to go. All right, guys, we've made much progress this afternoon. I stole my air intake off the Gray Ghost, went to AutoZone and got a couple of nice hoses there. And this one that is so remarkably close to the right fit. Let me show you guys. This is actually not, believe it or not, they didn't make this for my engine swap, but this particular hose fires right there. And then goes all the way down perfectly to the thermostat housing. Like, tell me that doesn't look like it's supposed to be there. It's crazy. The curves are almost all perfect, including this little dive down there. I need to make a couple of inches onto the thermostat housing over there, but this is like so close. I'm going to try to see if I might be able to like heat this up and bend it naturally so I don't have to fight it because it's pinching a little, but I mean, really, that's it. That's all the hoses necessary for this particular thing. The air intake is on. So here we are, dudes. That's about, like I said, 7 weeks of work to get to this point. I needed some promo shots for the website, and I didn't want to use the radiator and make it look gross before this, but I think it looks spectacular. I hope you guys like it. Really excited for this last phase, just getting this thing done so I can finally disassemble it and get it in the car for some extensive testing. So as always, I humbly appreciate your time and energy watching this and all of your likes and subscribes and shares and things like that. You guys keep on rocking. We'll talk to you next time.